having worked so extensively in a traditional media like theater, what can you tell us about how storytelling in new media is different, like in podcasting and other formats?
You know, storytelling is our human birthright. We've been telling stories for millions of years. When I say millions, that really comes directly from the mouth of one of South Africa's greatest paleoanthropologists, whose work was really seminal in looking at the origins of humankind. Before we could speak, we could sing. We were imitating the sounds of the animals. So we've been telling stories since the origins of our species. And in a sense, no matter what the medium is, a story is a story. In my definition of a story, it has a beginning, it has an emotional turning point, and it has an end. So it doesn't matter what the medium is. However, there are different ways of communicating stories. So in the oral tradition, such as what I'm doing right now, as I'm telling you a story as a three-dimensional being on camera, you can see me. You can see the expressions on my face. You can see my hand gestures. So the totality of me is telling the story, and I'm engaging with the totality of you, the listener. A podcast or radio is something different. You're driving in your car, you're listening to someone telling a story, but you don't have that visual association. So, and then of course, there's the mass of social media that's out there. And I would say that there's a lot of claiming that things are stories, when in fact they're not stories at all. So for instance, your Facebook profile is not a story. It's a profile. It's a collection of elements. You may choose to combine those elements into a story that can be shared with other people, a story that has direction, that has purpose, that's communicating a message, but it's not necessarily a story. So the new media is using the word story a lot, but that's not accurate as far as I'm concerned, in terms of really adhering to the kind of classic form of what storytelling is.
I think that's a really interesting and really valid perspective, because when we're sharing these stories on social media, it's really more like a snapshot. We're not getting that whole arc that you talked about.
Yes, it's a snapshot. And a snapshot doesn't create context. You know, Daniel Pink, who wrote this incredible book called A Whole New Mind, you know, describes story as context enriched by emotion. You need to have context. You need to understand that I developed the storytelling method, for instance, at the height of the AIDS epidemic, when people were dying without leaving anything behind, and they needed to leave something behind, and their stories are what they could leave behind. You need that context to understand my story.